The name of my presentation is Global Music Recording versus Recording Music Licensing Committee. That's GMR versus RMLC. Now, in a suit filed in December of 2016, GMR Global Music Recording sued RMLC, the Radio Music Licensing Committee, claiming that the RMLC's Committee of Radio Stations seeks to discourage competition amongst these stations with the common goal of keeping payments to songwriters and music publishers artificially low, and using its collective power to do so. Now, Global Music Recording was launched in 2015 by music industry veteran Irvin Azoff. GMR will need to win concessions from broadcasters in order to live up to its promise to the music industry. It has vowed to collect royalties 30% above what radio pays to other performance right organizations to its catalog. That includes more than 200 artists, many of whom were previously represented by ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. Now, that was our plaintiff. Now along comes the defendant, the Music License Committee, RMLC. The Radio Music License Committee represents the interests of commercial radio industry. Some 10,000 commercial radio stations on music licensing matters. The RMLC's roots go back to the 1930s. It's a nonprofit that represents some 10,000 commercial radio stations in the U.S. with regard to music licensing matters. Its board of directors is comprised of 25 diverse radio operators or management who serve voluntarily and without compensation. Now, there is no final decision as of yet, but since it is clear that no final agreement could be made between RMLC and GMR could be reached by January 1st of 2018, to avoid having stations that play GMR music being the subject of lawsuits for copyright violations, GMR has offered an interim license that lasts for 9 months, presumably that if in that time GMR and RMLC settle their disputes and arrive at a reasonable royalty rate, and that royalty rate is less than the interim rate, some credit for part of the sums paid under the interim rate could potentially be built into the new rates. Now, GMR just this week has reached out to many stations and groups with specific proposals as to the interim rate. Commercial stations that did not receive information from GMR can reach out to them and ask for the rate information. But GMR has given radio stations until January 31st of next year to agree to that rate, sign the interim license agreement, and pay the first month's royalties. If a station does not choose to sign the interim deal and has not negotiated its own royalty agreement and it continues to play music written by GMR artists, then it's potentially subject to a copyright infringement lawsuit. So in closing, the case is still going on and there's no final decision, but in my opinion, I believe artists should be paid more for radio play. The first check I ever received from ASCAP was for $2.17. Now, I appreciate it as I look back, but I do think that publishers, writers, and artists should be getting paid more, especially in the digital era. Thank you.